Welcome to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. On this podcast, we journey through the devastating experience of the death of a child. Grief is seldom discussed openly in our culture, and the death of a child makes people feel even more uncomfortable. We approach the topic openly and honestly, speaking to people who have lost loved ones and experts who help care for them. Whether you are a parent experiencing loss or someone who wants to support another going through this tragedy, this podcast strives to offer hope and help.
Welcome to episode 221 of Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. I'm Marcy Larson, Andy's mom. Today I have the pleasure to talk with David, Nick's dad. I always really get so much out of speaking with dads to just learn from a dad's perspective a little bit. I know so many of my listeners enjoy that. And I have talked to moms who have their husbands listen to these dad's episodes as well. So I know all of you will really enjoy listening to him. Again, if you would like to share your story, feel free to email me. I am booking interviews for the winter time. And don't feel like you have to have done something remarkable and amazing. Nick's dad, for example, has written a book, but you don't have to have written a book. It can just be your own simple grief story because everyone's story is precious and everyone's story is important. Right now, I just want you to sit back and enjoy listening to David, Nick's dad. Thank you so much, David, for agreeing to come on the Always Andy's Mom podcast today.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the chance to share my son's story and my wife's and my journey.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing more about it too. I feel like I know quite a bit already, and we'll get into why I know quite a bit a little bit later. But why don't you start just by telling us all about your son, Nick?
Nick was our younger son. We have an older son named JP. Everybody else calls him John, but we still call him JP. And Nick was 4 years younger, and he was just from the get-go an adventurous, curious, often impulsive young man, your little boy. I wrote the book Forever 13, and you probably read some of the stories about him. I mean, he just escaped the house.
I did, yeah.
And then we go get him, and he's like, I did it. Everything was an adventure to him. He was always very kind, very loving. He got along with almost everybody. He just loved life. He was just a fun character. Sometimes I can't believe you just did that. He was my Renaissance man, or he was going to be my Renaissance man. At 13, he already could do so many other things.
Yeah.
Not only was he a smart kid, he was a talented kid. He played music, instruments. He could draw. He could paint. He could design. He did intricate things with Legos and just make things. He could fix things around the house. Which I could sure use now. Although my older son's getting better at it, sometimes we might probably were both thinking, it'd be nice if Nick was here. He could handle that.
Yeah, right. Well, he was quite the woodworker too, right?
Yes, he could. He loved his wood shop. That was his favorite class, despite everything else he could do. And he made 2 guitars that they hang up in our wall in the house over here. My brother-in-law put them up for us, and he just loved working with his hands. He just loved to create. Mm-hmm. Very, very creative. As a matter of fact, that's what my wife likes to refer to him as her creative angel in heaven.
Yeah.
And he was a bit of a mama's boy, which is fine with me.
Yeah.
When he was 13, he was going through his rebellious age, his teen years, and mostly aimed at me, because he wasn't gonna. His mom was his favorite, so. But again, he had a gift for being empathetic to other kids. Mm-hmm. He made friends with the kids who were disabled, and we could be in the mall or somewhere, and then you'd see one of those kids from school, and he knew their name, ran over to them and said, "Hi, how are you doing?" And you want to come hang out with us, type thing. And again, he was our kid who loved every holiday. Mm-hmm. He'd celebrate everything, not just Christmas and New Year's. He loved his birthday. He'd celebrate Winnie the Pooh Day. He'd share, if it was, dress up and wear purple day. Okay, that's fine with me, and he would do that too. I see that must be your son's baseball thing in the back.
Yeah.
I was a baseball man. Neither of my boys got into it, maybe because of me. But he was a really good swimmer. He was learning to be a pretty good water polo player, and he was again adventurous to the point where he did live dangerous.
Yeah.
I guess the way to put it, he was on a group that went skiing all the time up in Lake Tahoe with my son and other groups, and he went down one of those diamond runs. He was only 10 years
Yeah.
old, only been skiing for about a week or two, and they said turn, 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 and he did. He was flying down the hill. He got down the bottom, and the instructor went down and said, "Why didn't you turn?" He just looked at him and said, "But then I wouldn't go as fast." You know?
I loved reading about his last Halloween costume that he did because that was pretty cool to me. And we just passed Halloween at the time of this recording, not when it's being released, but at the time of the recording. So you got to talk about that because I want to learn a little bit more about that, actually.
Well, he was into that kind of Transformers and stuff like that. I'm sure your boys were too. And he just decided he was going to make a costume where he transformed himself into a pickup truck.
Yes.
And out of it. Into a robot and then back down to a truck. And he worked.
And of course, those costumes don't really exist, so he had to make it up himself.
He got cardboards and boxes and tapes, and he's drawing it. And he was drawing the designs, working on it. When he was done with his homework at night before the bed, we'd say, "You got to go to bed." He was working on it, writing it, and everything else. And then the night he finally had it all put together, he had to paint it. And I don't know where, but he found some black paint in the garage. And he's painting, and then he comes in. He comes to my, I was working. "I thought you were in bed." He goes, "Oh, I was painting my costume." "Well, you're supposed to be in bed." And he ran out of paint. So I go, "Well, there's nothing open." But I ran over to Walmart, got him some, let him finish it. And there's a touching thing. There's still we thought we covered the bottom of the garage floor. So paint, there's still a strip of little black paint. It's still there. And that reminds me, and that tells me, that's going to be there forever, at least around here. That's when they made his costume. And at first I thought everybody was going to make fun of him, but everybody just loved it. As a matter of fact, my wife has we have it on the Facebook, and she has it. And there's like a 20-30 second videotape that his woodshop teacher made of him at school, getting up as a robot, went down to the truck. Left as a robot, going down the truck, and he says something, and that's one of our most treasured pieces of anything we have.
Oh, you got to get that to me. Maybe I can post that. We'll see if I can post that up to Instagram or something. Because holy cow, it just sounded really cool, and I love the way you said. And you kind of were a little nervous, like people might make fun of it or something, make fun of him because it wasn't like a costume that you would go and buy. It was homemade with cardboard. But the fact that everybody loved it was really telling.
Yeah. I mean, there were just like any kid. There were times like, I don't want to do that. It'd be scary. But for the most part, he wanted to do it. He didn't care. He didn't care what you were going to think, As long as he enjoyed it and he was going to have fun and some of his friends liked it, he was fine.
Yeah.
Like I said, he's an adventurer. He's an adventurous kid. And we miss him. But we're so glad he was here.
Well, I love hearing that about a 13-year-old kid who still was okay kind of marching to his own drum a little bit because so often, I mean, being a pediatrician, I see lots of kids and lots of that middle school age kid. They just want to be just like everyone else. And so it was kind of refreshing to hear this story of a kid who really didn't mind not being like everyone else and actually loved not being like everyone else.
Yeah. And that's why one of my favorite songs, I'm an old 50s and 60s song because that's what my dad made me listen to when I was growing up. And I try to make my boys listen to it too. Nah, Dad, you're just an old man. But Weezer has a song called Pork and Beans. And I like that song because the lyrics pretty much say, I'm not going to do what you want me to do. I'm going to eat my candy with pork and beans. And that's what he was like,
Yeah. Love that. Love that. So do you want to talk a little bit now about what happened to Nick?
Yeah, I can. I will be honest. I don't usually talk a lot about the details. Not because it's horrifying, but, well, first let me just say that Nick was curious, adventurous, impulsive. It was an accident at home.
Yeah.
There was nobody here, and and he decided he wanted to fool around doing something, and it caused him to be in a situation that he just got stuck in, and he died on it.
Yeah.
My wife, unfortunately, was the one that had discovered it. He tried to give CPR. I didn't know until I got home, and this was fire
Oh,
engines
wow.
everywhere, and I'm coming in. What happened? What happened? And it just that night is just it's just still a fog at times.
Yeah. I'm sure. I'm sure.
We have a lot of friends in the police department here, and they did their investigation. They said, all 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 things point to an accident. All things
Mm-hmm.
point to an accident, and so when I look back on it, do I need to? I mean, I'm the only one that saw the autopsy. My wife didn't see it,
Yeah.
and even with that, what in the end really caused it was the way he lived his life. I just want to do this. Mom wasn't here. Mom went to go get food, so he's going to do it now because dad's off at school still.
Yeah.
He's not back yet. And JP went with my wife, and then and that was and to really go into the details and about how that he died doing something he probably shouldn't have been doing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'd be angry. I'd be angry. If I had gotten there and saw it before anything happened, I probably would have chewed him out. What are you doing? What are you thinking? What are we talking about?
Yeah.
You have to control it. And but if I was to be angry about it, then I would be angry at the fact that that's who he was. I mean, if the accident never happened, he would have still been a very curious, very adventurous, very impulsive young man. I prefer just to be thankful and think more about how wonderful it was to have him here for 13 years than
Mm-hmm.
that moment when he left us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a conversation I have with a lot of people I talk to, whether it's grief share as a facilitator or in my men's bereavement group, my father's bereavement group. And we can, if you want to talk detail, that's fine, but we don't have to hear that. The one important thing is the one thing we all have in common is we lost our child. Yes, we want them here. But in the file of all the great things that he did, it's this tall.
Yeah.
Having him here was this tall. And for the moments I was upset, or the most upsetting moment is that he left us,
Right.
and it's that small. Okay, I can dwell on that, but then I'm cheating people knowing who he was.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I did the eulogy, and I want people to know just how much he loved them, and I don't know that anybody else could do that. I'm not sure I did it because I don't remember half of it. If it wasn't for my notes that I put in the book, I don't know that I can remember all those things. But like I said, losing him was like losing a piece. And
Yeah.
we look in the mirror. People that don't never lost a child, especially because they're part of it. And it's like I look in the mirror and I have a limit, and it's never going to go away. Or my heart grows bigger because I now have a daughter-in-law and I have a grandson who's named Nick, by the way.
Yeah.
And I have room for more love and more people to enter my life, but there will always be that hole in my heart until I see him again. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Actually, I would say my favorite part of your book was when you were talking about how the days go by, then it turns into weeks, then it turns into months, and it turns into years. And you said something about there being a bean counter, like up in heaven, that is adding another bean. And when you think about it like that, about every day being further away, that hurts. But what you mentioned and what I really grasped onto is the fact that there is also a bean coming out of our jar, about the jar that on how many days we have left until we get to heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And I started envisioning that a little bit, and I started thinking of some bean counter up in heaven, taking one bean out of my jar and just transferring it to the other jar. And suddenly thinking about the fact that there are always going to be the same amount of days between when I, seeing him and when I'm going to see him again, right? That number, God knows that number. I don't know that number. I don't know. All I know is I'm in the middle on that timeline, and every day I go a little further on the timeline, but it stays. So if it's 10,586 days between his death and mine, That's never going to change.
Mm-hmm.
It just changes where the bean is, which jar the bean is. If it's in the jar of me before me going to heaven or in the jar of the days since Andy's gone to heaven. And that was super comforting to me. I just loved that image.
The way you just described it now, my vision goes of that's the bean that is between Nick and me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And every time one is taken out of my jar, it's put into Nick's jar.
Yeah.
And knowing my son Nick, every day he goes, how many more beans before I see my dad again? At least I hope he will.
Yeah.
His dad gets, because that's just the way you just said that. Now I got a whole different vision of that too. That wow,
right? Because that's the way you started saying it a certain way, and then it just got me thinking, and I was like, wow. I mean, it's the same number of days. It's been the same number of days forever, and it will continue to be the same number of days. It's just where I am on the timeline, and that just felt good to me. I kind of just needed that, so I thank you for that.
You're welcome, and the premise of that idea also is you say you only have 14 pages to go. It's not a mystery novel, so I hope I don't get away. But there is I do mention an individual named Zig Ziglar who said that God knows exactly how many days you're going to be here. There's nothing you can do to make change. And I always think of myself as being in a race, and in that race I've gone down. I actually wrote this part. I have a second book done, a manuscript that's already been approved. I haven't signed an agreement yet, but in it I mentioned about going to heaven, and there's Jesus welcoming me home, and then just at the last second, and then he's looking at me, and I go, yeah, and he's pointing here. By the way, look over here, and coming out of the fog, Jesus tells me, oh, there's somebody else doing what you see, waiting for you to come home, and it's me.
Yeah.
So, and that's a sad thing to say. I mean, today's my late mother's birthday, and should I be wanting to see her first? If my wife ever went before me, honestly, the first person I want to see is Nick. And after Jesus, of course, the first person I want to see is Nick.
Yeah, I'm with you. I lost my mom, a long time ago when I was 21 years old. So, but I still, first person I want to see is Andy, for sure.
And I think our mothers would totally understand.
Oh, yeah.
If they're in that place, I think they would totally understand.
Right. I just feel like they're together anyway. And that the first thing would happen, it would be my mom would be like, here's Andy, here's Andy, here's Andy. So.
Yeah. Well, like I said, in the book, to me, he's forever 13. I've never spent a lot of time thinking about what would he be like now. Occasionally that passes my mind. If I see one of his friends,
right,
something like that. I've even taken. I work out deep water classes in the pool, and there's a young lady walking by, for example. It could be any young lady. I would think that young lady would be dating my son.
Right.
I even joked once in my mind. I wouldn't say out loud, "That's my daughter-in-law," but but that's why I wrote the book Forever 13, because that's how I remember him.
Yeah.
That's how I remember him. And it was a full life.
Yeah.
It was a full life. And I think I mentioned in the book that God, and you probably had people who have said, oh, he lived too short a life. He got cheated. And I think God knows exactly how long he wanted him here. And he gave him a full life. Now, my wife and I got cheated. Like you probably got cheated.
For sure.
Yeah, I want my son here. I want to be 26 years old right now. Would he be buddies with his brother, or would they be? Who knows? He'd be a blast having an uncle. He'd be a great uncle. He might be married by now, or whatever else. With all the talents he had, I can't imagine what he probably could have become. But to me, he's 13. And he'll always be there because you know what? That's what I expect to see when I get there.
Yeah.
That's why I have this little beard here. He made me grow this.
Oh, did he?
And I grew it. At least about 10, 11. He goes, Dad, you should grow those beards, okay? And then I grew it, and after I go, oh, you should shave it off. Okay, fine. But I shaved it off about a month later, and he looked at me. You need to grow it back. So my thought process is, I'm going to keep this. It's a lot wider than it was when I last saw him, but I want him to recognize Dad too.
Yeah. Well, do you want to talk a little bit about your early grief journey and kind of how that was? And Because it was different between you and your wife, I know.
Mm-hmm. First off, the support we got from family,
Mm-hmm.
immediate family, friends, and our church was so wonderful. So much needed and so much grateful for. But as you know, as time goes on, everybody else moves on,
Yes.
and I don't fault any of them,
No, of course not. Mm-hmm.
whether it's my family or friends. I don't fault them. But for us, it does move on. We look at that. We look at that. The dining table. There's still one seat empty.
Yeah.
And then so Kirsty and I, we started immediately trying to find some kind of support, whether all kind of bereaved parents of America or grief share. Later, we got the grief share, and each time we went to the support, it became very obvious that we see things a little differently.
Yeah.
We can grieve together, which is what we did, but we also grieve differently. I mean, I already told you that I jokingly like to say that Nick was probably a mommy's boy, but they had a very tight relationship, and that relationship that Christy had with Nick was not as a mother son, was not the same as I had with him as a father son.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as parents to Nick, we had that relationship, but we all have individual relationships with our kids. I'm sure your husband and your other children, their relationship with Andy was unique.
Yeah.
Just like my son JP, and my son JP is still working through it. I think but he's getting better. He just told me the other day, Dad, I found late at night. I finally got around to start reading more and more of your book, and he said it brought back some good memories, and I was glad to see that. But his as a sibling, he had a different relationship, so it became very obvious. We just agreed that we're gonna grieve together, but separately,
Mm-hmm.
but together. And I had to respect what she had with Nick, and I believe she respects what I had with Nick as well. And I was envious that I never got to have that relationship. Being a high school teacher at the time, I just got along better with those teenagers. I mean, my oldest son was a pain in the rear at that time, but I knew how to deal with it because I would deal with it every day. Unfortunately, drove my wife nuts. But Nick said, "Okay, you know what? He's going to be in high school. You're probably going to need or pretend that he's not listening to my advice on how to deal with something in high school just because I've seen it every day. But I just assumed I was going to have a better relationship with him.
Yeah.
And which I haven't lost all that.
Right.
My wife was a teacher. She was a coach too, and never doubted the minute we had JP and then afterwards Nick, he was not going back to work as a teacher.
Yeah.
She was not going to go back. She loved being a stay-at-home mom. She was good at it. She lived for everything about it, good and bad. She just lived for it. And I could see that when we lost Nick, that such a big part of her was gone, and she didn't know what to do. I mean, we still had JP.
Yeah.
Still had to raise him. But he's only a year or two away from being an adult out of the house.
Yeah.
And even now, she's still a great mother to JP. JP talks to her all the time now. Something he didn't, I never thought would happen. But not having Nick there, it was all her plans, all her day, whether it was she'd go to work and then go pick him up at school, get him his homework, off to swim practice, and by then JP's driving, so JP doesn't need mom and dad for that anymore. Just having that, even though he was 13, having that.
It was a big part of her identity. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a gigantic, and I could see that it hurt her to not have that, and I I don't know what to do, but again, man, dad, fix it. I came to the realization I can't fix it.
No.
So we have to work through it together, even though parts of it is separate, because she had to work through her grief of losing Nick as her baby, and my baby is different.
Mm-hmm.
There's just some things. Nick talked differently to me. He acted differently around dad, and I really think that caused cancer in her too as well. Because I think her,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying the disease happened because we lost Nick, but her physical trying to survive and through all that emotional trial just let everything down, and I think it made her vulnerable.
Yeah.
We have shared going through grief share together. We're both facilitators.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the biggest thing that we can count on is our faith.
Mm-hmm.
I have other kids through this. I have other people and friends that are going through this now, and some of them don't have the Lord in their life, And I just don't know how they get to that next day, because at some point we get to the why, or we get to the I don't understand,
Mm-hmm.
and the only way we can seem to get to it is to let God let us know somehow. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's a Jeremiah 29:11. Honestly, I started the third one, and I'm basing my base is going to be that, and you know, and my thought is, what do you mean you don't mean any harm to me? At the time, I don't have my son died. You know, you know, I want to give you hope. What kind of hope do I have? My son died,
Right.
and it took me a while to feel God's presence. And you know, you got to give the Lord credit. You know, he didn't hold it. He didn't hold a grudge at me for not having faith at the moment, or not having, just not trusting that he has a plan still for me. Because you know, and I think it's what my wife was too, is that she didn't feel like the plan that God had for her, and the plan that she had, which she thought was parallel, now with Nick gone. What am I supposed to do?
Right.
And I still have that something. So.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest thing for me was to try to get trust, and still is for
Uh-huh.
sure, the trust piece, because certainly I had times that I was angry with God and upset with God, and I felt like he would be okay with that. Like God can take that. And it
Yeah,
seemed better for me to be angry with God than to be angry with someone else, right? Because I felt like God can definitely handle that. But the biggest, most difficult piece for me has been trying to get that trust back, just because of just feeling always a little bit on edge that if this can happen once, it can happen again. And how could I ever handle it happening again? And
hmm
it's just a lot. It's a lot. Hmm.
and I think that my wife probably feels the same, and maybe my son JP, is that you know, how can God have a plan for us? What possible plan would make things better, or that I would still be of use to others through this? I mean, you know, God, you could have made use of me in so many ways and not taken my son.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that was it. You know, but we in Greece share, there was a speaker on the video that if you, even if God told you why,
Yeah.
even if he told you why, you found out why, it'd still be an empty seat at the dinner table.
Yep. So in some ways, it doesn't matter.
Right,
Hmm.
right. But part of the plan is that I keep them alive in our heart. We keep our children alive in our heart, and in your heart.
Yeah.
We talk about them. I wrote something about my sister and my brother-in-law. That one of the greatest things. I made sure that they were separate. At first, when I wrote the dedication and acknowledgement, I listed all my family. I didn't my brother and my sister-in-law, my sister, my brother-in-law. I go, oh, they're going to think something's wrong. So when they go down to the bottom, it's just that they just happen to go a little. All my other family always been supportive, but they go the extra mile. They have no. They talk about him. You don't know what that does to us, does it? When you want to
Yeah.
talk about our child, you think it might hurt, but I don't care if I'm crying. Please keep.
Yeah. Keep going. It's like music, right? It's like music.
Yeah, like he was still here, and he's still here in their heart,
Hmm.
and they share stories that they remember, and that's what people that as we go on through our grief don't understand.
Hmm.
Early on, we learned Christianity not to be upset at anybody. There's some people that go, okay, you know what, but they don't understand, and I don't really want you to understand.
Right.
I
Right.
mean,
Exactly. You don't.
there
Hmm.
might be people you and I just do not like. I don't ever want that. There might be a lot of things I don't care
No.
happen to you, but definitely one thing I do care want to happen to you. I never want you or anyone else to go through this.
No. No. It's interesting you talking about that dinner table example, because it does make me think so much about my Andy, because we always had a table of six. So we had a rectangular table and it always had six chairs, but we were a family of five, and it always really bothered Andy that there was an empty chair at the table, and we would talk about, oh, that the empty chair was Jesus or something like that, to try to
Mm-hmm.
make him feel a little bit better about having an empty chair. But then we got our foster son, Valeriano. And one of the things that he was so excited about, because he was so excited about so much, but when we found out we were going to have him, I just remember him saying, there's not going to be an empty chair at the table anymore,
Mm-hmm.
because we're going to have six people at the table every day. So there were always six of us at the table. So it really was so painful when we went back to 5, because he was the one that it bothered so much that when we were at 5 to begin with, like there always should have been a 4th kid in our family, and there never was until, he was a little bit older. So, man, it still is to this day painful having that empty spot when everyone's home, because Valeriano still comes home for dinner for a fair amount, just because I think my cooking is better than his own in his own house. But whenever it's setting that table for 5, it's still just hurts just a little bit,
And I can empathize with that even more so. But after a while, maybe about a year, I started sitting in the next seat at dinner.
Did you?
And the empty seat was mine for my wife, and I sit next to my oldest son. And also, any chance if my son, my older son, his best friend, or a young lady he might be dating at the time, can they come over? Yes, because the empty chair bothered me.
Right.
The empty chair bothered me. And even going out to dinner, they go out to eat. Yeah, they come. Now there's 4 people at the dinner table. If we go out to eat, so the empty chair bothered me. Mm-hmm. Not to the point of being depressed or relaxed, but it just made me feel like, okay, that's just something I don't have to dwell on, seeing at the moment, but a reminder that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One other thing that I really loved about your book is when you talked about having your little miracle moments. Mm-hmm. I always call those God winks in the podcast. We call them God winks, but
I like that.
Talk about your little miracle moments. Some of those.
The one that I really like, and my wife reminded me I got it wrong because we used to go down to Southern California at New Year's, at Christmas, just Christmas was here at home. And we'd drive down to Southern California, and we skipped it about a year or two. And then when my wife and I finally went back, my son couldn't. By now he's in Ohio, I think. So we went down there. We were kayaking with my nephew and my niece, my brother's 2 kids. And after we were done, we said, let's go get some ice cream. So we went over to get some ice cream, and it was on her chest, on her back. On her chest was a stain. And my niece goes, "Hey, Kitty, look, you have a heart. Oh my God." And then the stain didn't go away. It stayed on her shirt. Mm-hmm. And she took pictures and stuff. But she took that shirt and she folded it up. It's in a frame. And it's right on the side of the wall of the bed where she can wake up every morning and first thing she sees is the heart. Yeah. So we get those kind of miracle moments. Mm-hmm. I spoke about the miracle moments at Christmas.
Yeah.
I have those too. But the big one was on the first birthday he was gone.
Yes, that first year anniversary. That was my favorite one. Yep.
Yeah, I was naive enough to believe that. Okay, on his first birthday, his birthday in May. Okay, if I get to that, I'll be okay. Well, that's ridiculous. We all know this is for life.
Yeah, because he died on the 13th of January. I'm just going to tell people he died on the 13th of January, and and David here had put a timeline on himself that he would be okay by May, by his birthday.
Right. Yeah.
Which I read that and I was like, okay, whatever. You haven't even started yet, my friend.
and I hope I made it very clear that didn't work.
No, that did not work.
But and like I said in the book, if there's those who haven't read, I hope some people buy the book and read it. But the thing is that we had everybody come over to the house, we cleared up the garage. We're gonna have we got all the favorite foods, the favorite chocolate cake, and like I said in the book, and mind you, with Nick, anything with chocolate was good. Didn't matter what it was. It could be chocolate spaghetti, he'd love it. And we had the balloons out there. We had pens to write up like that. Those who couldn't make it, he had friends wherever they were doing balloons themselves. Our family in Ohio were doing balloons at the same time. But it was raining that day. And we finally got down those sprinkles. So we all went out in the cul-de-sac. It's a lot of people.
And how is this balloon release going to work in the rain? Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But it got down to a little drizzle. So I said, let's go out. Might as well. We don't know if it's going to be any lighter. And as we got out there, the drizzling stopped. I thanked everybody for being there. Did a prayer and we sang happy birthday, and then we released the balloon. And I'm not making it, but I hope people realize I'm not making this up. I have witnesses that were there. As the balloon started up in the air, the clouds in the sky, the dark gray clouds, like a little hole opened up, and you could see a patch of blue, and most of the balloons just flowed right through there. And to me, I always said, God opened up heaven on Nick's birthday, which he always loved He loved being, this is my day, and this is my big day, and all the balloons and messages went up in the neck, and then I found out later we're not supposed to do balloons anymore, but so hope this.
That was just beautiful. I
Hmm.
mean, what a beautiful image, though,
Hmm.
of the sky just opening up and just
Yeah.
collecting all the balloons like that. I love it. Love it.
And then there's this Christmas. I have a open date with Nick, probably until I can't do it anymore physically. But I go to our church where we have a granite bench dedicated to him. It has his name on it and scripture on it. On Christmas morning, I go. It's still dark. I take a cup of coffee. It's really cold in Sacramento at that time of year. So I'm sitting there chilling, waiting for the sun to come up. I admit to crying. I admit to talking to him. The sunset comes out over the top where I could see Sacramento, and the sunlight starts to hit from the church, from the sits on a big hill. And except for one time, that feels raining. A bird just shows up.
Mm-hmm.
Bird just shows up. Sometimes I think there's no bird this year. I look up the side and there's a bird sitting on a branch.
Yeah.
So I just think God sends a bird there that says, hey, Dad, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Dad, I'm okay. Go enjoy Christmas again.
Yeah. For me, it's a cardinal. It's always a cardinal.
Uh-huh.
They'll just fly in front of the car, or they'll, last time we just had his 5-year anniversary of his death. And I've said this on the podcast before, that I was walking out of the Y because I decided to go to the Y for a little bit. I was just having such a hard day. And I just said to myself and to God, I sure could use a sign about now, because I just was so down. And got in the car, and my husband's driving, and we literally are halfway between. We live maybe a mile and a half from the Y, so we're about halfway home, and a cardinal just flies right in front of the windshield, and I was like, "Thanks, God. Yep, I really needed that. I really needed that today. Just one of those little cardinal moments." So I love it.
And I like that they come not when I want. I'd like one. It just somehow you need it.
Yeah.
It just shows up.
And that one I needed. And I'm not one to ask God for that. I just don't do that. I don't know if it's not wanting to put God to the test or whatever it is. But
Mhm.
that day I just really just desperately needed it. And so then I asked. And I think it was because I just desperately needed it. Just so sad,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then but there's so many other things that generate triggers, and now I don't feel the triggers as I wrote in the book. I don't feel that all triggers are bad anymore. Initially, when we first lost them, and as you know, when any trigger just it just was the hurt, the heat, the pain, and everything else. But I think about Nick every day. I know you think of Andy every day,
Every day.
and because I think of him every day, sometimes those triggers just help to remind me that he was here. But also, the triggers can also help me with happy memories. Like I said, losing that moment we lost Nick is a horrible hours or day or two of my life. But I saw him born, and I saw him before he left, and those 13 years, I would never give up.
No.
I would never give up. The only painful thing I have with this whole thing is I honestly thought, when I go, whether my wife's there or not, whether I go, both my boys would be there to see me go. But now, it'll just be JP. But the smile on my face, I think, when I get to see Nick, that's going to be all, I think I think that's all part of God's plan. For, my wife once told me early in our grief, and I said, and I'm sure you had the same situation. Why couldn't it just be me? I'd have preferred it be me, not instead of him. And she goes, well, God doesn't think you're ready, but Nick was. And I think it'd be hard for her to say, for a woman who just, and I know the relationship you have with Nick, but that had to be hard for her to say, but it was true. And I don't think I'm done yet. If I took Nick 13 years of what he probably, if you think of what he accomplished for having been here, for all of his family and friends and everyone else. I'm 63, and I don't think I've even equaled it yet because I'm still here.
Well, and your wife had to battle cancer too, and that you alluded to that a little bit ago, that not too long after Nick died, what was it, 6 months or a year or something, she got her cancer diagnosis, right? 6 months?
6 months. Right. Yeah, and I know you're a doctor, so you probably, if you had been around, you would have said there's something not right because she was having bleeding at the cervical area for a long time, and she thought, maybe it's part of
Yeah.
grieving, and I haven't or whatever. So 6 months after the fact, I had when I came home and she told me, I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, of course, worst case scenario, she was even thinking that too. But I got to tell you, my wife is my hero. I can't believe what she went through, the treatment she went through. She's already a physically fit individual. My mother-in-law had passed away a year before of cancer, but her strength and faith in God and that the Lord will take care of her. But initially, she was willing
Yeah.
to just, I'm not going to do anything because the end result was
Mm-hmm.
being with Nick.
And that seemed like a good idea at the time then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But eventually, people and others, and I think in his way, God is letting them know that, you, you're not done yet
Yeah.
here. There's other people. You still have work to do. He needed to work on me. His son, our oldest son, now we have a grandson. And I think that I going through it 3 times. But what I really admire, if anybody else has ever truly understands child grief, is that through all the treatment she had, and she had internal and external radiation at the same time she was going through chemo. Later on, the chemo was doing nothing, so
Mm-hmm.
she ended up with immunotherapy, a clinical trial. Uh, at the end of the last treatment. In all that time, Nick grieving for Nick
Yeah.
was always the top of it. And I even titled that particular chapter, compared to losing a child, cancer is nothing. And that's how my wife felt. And I think she was able, because that's the fact that she was physically in such great shape. She was able to get through all of that. I think it would have killed a lot of people, to be honest. But um, just because, but the fact that her priority was always Nick, even even while she was going through all that tough cancer treatment. I mean, she is for any woman who's lost a child, or any parents who lost a child, or also people going through cancer to see what she's gone through. I think she really, really is a great example of where
Mm-hmm.
life priority should be. And like I said, she's my hero. She's my hero. Without her, I don't know where I'd be.
When Andy died, he died in August, and both of my parents had cancer. In their 30s, actually. My mother died when she was 42. My dad is still living, but because of that, I had to start getting mammograms and colonoscopies in my 20s, actually. So like long long before most people are. So I had to get a mammogram every year, and I had to get my
Mm-hmm.
colonoscopy every 4 years, and both of those things were due just a couple of months after Andy died. And of course I didn't do them then because I just couldn't, but it came maybe around January or so, like, well, I should go get all that done. And what was really weird this time is that a tiny little bit of me wanted it to be positive. A tiny bit of me wanted that mammogram to find some cancer, or wanted the colonoscopy to find cancer. And I was like, this is horrible that I'm actually having this thought for the first time ever with all of these scans that I've had done before, that I kind of a little bit wouldn't mind so much if it was positive. But it's because I just so desperately missed him and so desperately wanted to be with him that, like, well, just wouldn't be so bad actually this time, right? It was just the weirdest
Yeah.
feeling. So when I heard that about your wife, I thought, I sort of can get that. I sort of can get why she would have said that. And now it's funny, I
Mm-hmm.
just had the thought of, it wouldn't be so bad. Maybe it would be all right. I don't think I actually had gone on to think of, would I do treatment or any of that, right? Because it never got that far. But I could understand how it could.
As her husband and her life partner, I wasn't necessarily hurt by that attitude that she originally had. Like, well, actually, Nick, I'm not going to, because my wife, chemo is poisoning the body, and that's not, in her opinion, that's not conducive to
Yeah.
to a healthy lifestyle. And
But you just need to do something that's going to poison the cancer more than the body, right? That's the whole point of it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I did feel the only thing I might have felt a little odd was like, but
Right.
JP's still here. Me, but JP's still here, and maybe she thought, well, you'll take care of him.
I know. That's exactly what she thought. Because that's what I thought. Because I'm thinking to myself, we divide and conquer all the time. Nobody's with Andy. Somebody needs to be with Andy. You've got the other kids. I can be with Andy. Like, that's what ends up going through your mind. So I'm sure that's what was going through her mind. Like,
Yeah. I mean, years later, we could look back and say, did you see how well you left me alone with them? How things worked out? Are you sure you wanted to do that? But at the time, that's probably exactly what went through my mind. Well, he was 18 already, as a senior in high school, and he goes, you're here, but both my son and I are both grateful, as are so many other people, that Kirsty decided that, you know what, I'm going to go. Okay. She changed her heart. She went through all that treatment, and like I said, I can't say it enough how much she's my hero. Somebody did that before I left school. They said they at school for the following classroom door asked us, "What's your favorite food? Where'd you go to school? What have you done?" And they go, "Who's your hero?" I just said, "My wife."
Yeah.
Didn't even hesitate. Everybody else was naming the famous athletes, famous huge songwriters, the rock girls. My wife.
Yeah.
Bottom line.
Yeah. I love that. So you do some work with bereaved dads now, right? Don't you do a group with bereaved dads?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I facilitate.
Because you do grief share, I know, with church and your wife, but I think you do something more particular with just bereaved dads, which I think is pretty cool.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know how your husband has grieved, but the bottom line is we men tend to not want to give out our emotions, not cry in front of another, show weakness. We're famous for that. My fist was this. I caught a fist, this big story. But when we're there, a lot of it goes away, and we might not talk that way when we leave the restaurant. We meet once a Saturday once a month on a Saturday. But when we're in there, we can talk about what's been going on, how we feel. And we have everything from myself, who lost a 13-year-old son, to Ron said, there's some guys meeting right now. All three of our sons are the same age. Nick would be 26 now. Another father who lost his son when he was 21 in a car crash, for example. He'll be 26 now. Another son who unfortunately lost his life at the hands of another. He'll be 26 now, and that sort of ties us together as well. But I think just the fact that we men, I think this world would be a little bit better place, and a lot more grief could be a lot easier for so much of us if we men would stop trying to be that stereotypical what a man's supposed to be. I'm Hispanic, so that's already going to strike against me. But maybe my education, maybe my other life experiences and stuff like that. And plus, I was in charge of the macho stuff at school.
Because you're a athletic director, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was an athletic director, and I took football, baseball for many years. But what we're supposed to do. But I think that may be better there too, empathetic. So I think when we leave those meetings, we're better people for it, better men for it. And I think especially when we have to respect our wives grieving, our children grieving. I mean, mind you, the first month or two, I was really upset at my older son. Said, "Why aren't you grieving like your mother and I?"
It's totally
It's different. It's his brother. Plus, he's got to do. He's still doing. Yeah. So the men's group has been very, very good. It was good for me. There's a former pastor. He is since too ill to do it anymore. So I took over it after COVID, and he invited me over. He owned the funeral parlor that handled our arrangements, and he had lost his son. That's why he did it, because he lost his son. So that has always been good for me. And we put everything aside. What's your politics? Who's your favorite king?
Yeah.
Whatever things you have. That's not. The point is, and that's what I like when I said, is we lost a son or we lost a daughter, and that's just the key point. We all have that in common. We got meetings where we rarely talked about our kids, but just being in the presence of other men who knew or know what's inside of us, that's been helpful to me, and I hope it's been helpful to them too.
Well, I thought when you wrote about how you're used to being able to fix it, right? And you feel like it's your job to fix it. And that's kind of a stereotypic man role to have to fix it. I actually really could identify quite a bit with that as a doctor too, because that's your doctor's role, is to fix everything too, and just the same. So in that way, I guess I'm an honorary man in that I feel like I need to fix all the problems. But anyway, it was. This is something you just can't fix. You just can't, and it's very hard to accept that sometimes when you are in that role of used to being able to fix everything or trying to fix everything.
I did have one student once come up to me years ago, a few years after my son died, and she found out that I had lost a son, and she goes, "Mr. Trish, how long does it take you to get over it?" And I said, "You never do it."
No, never.
I told her not a day goes by when I'm not thinking about him. Not an hour goes by when at least a thought about him pops into my head. You know, when I'm lecturing you in class, that people say, "Oh, that no matter what I'm doing, that's just how it is." Because I said, just like you are part of your parents and you're their life, whether you love each other or not. That was I've lost one of the two things that God put on this earth for me to do is raise sons, my two sons. But I also look at it, I'm not done apparently. Maybe God wanted me to also use my experience to write for over 13, or the next one I wrote, which is basically about a year in the life of a grieving father. It's aimed at dad, but I think any parent would get it. But it's aimed at dad. I just think that maybe because I feel like I need others to understand what I'm going through. I need others to be there for me, so I can. And I need to be there for them. So that's part of it. That's part of it.
And I love that you say that, because we do need people. We do. And that's what oftentimes others feel like, I can't do anything for you. You're just doing great. You're doing fine. You're so strong. You don't need me. But we do. We do need other people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when losing a child, I think when we talk to others, they can, and so many people have lost parents or other,
yeah,
it scares them.
Yes,
I think I've had family friends that are, it's great, and it's just like, my gosh, they don't know how to talk to us, or there's always that thought, why did that ever happen to me? And somehow they, without meaning to, that fear of that makes them ignore it.
I know.
Or walk the other way, or
like they think it's catchy or something.
Yeah.
It's not contagious. Trust me.
Yeah, and when I returned and going back to work, at least I'd been at that school for a long time. They had known Nick since he was a kid. I used to take him to practices and games sometimes, or in the summer before JP Nick had stuff to do here. Actually, I lived 35 minutes from where my school was. They knew him.
Yeah.
They saw him at his best, like he was going to take off with a golf cart or finding snakes in the bushes, So they knew my boys before that. But even then, I think, oh my gosh, do I talk to him? Do I not talk to him? And the American workplace, they give you the contractual 3 days off tomorrow. Okay, get back to work. I still expect you to do this. It's still, and again, I try not to blame anybody, but still, I think we need to. If we're not going to take care of us better in that situation, then we need to take care of each other. We need to have a father's group. We need to go to grief share. We need to go to some of the organizations. I forgot the names of them that you talk about that you go to. That sounds great. I wish I had some of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Starlight Ministries is where.
All of those.
Yeah.
I think we need those. And you know what? You still have some after a while. Some fathers who maybe it's because of pressure at work, whatever. After they've gone to a few of them, okay, I'm done. But they're not done. And I know they're not done. I can tell. But you know what? You just hope they'll come back, or if they need you, you're there for them.
Well, right. Or sometimes you can just do a little bit at a time, right? Sometimes you're going to do that, and then you need to take a step away, and then go back and work on it again, and take a step away. And if that's what you can do, that's what you can do.
And I think that's always been the most important part of grief counseling to us, or what we understand. Again, and I being a grief share, I work with others who are grieving all kinds of different losses, not just a child loss. But our child loss is so unique.
Yeah, it is really unique.
That saying, I put it in my book, but I think my wife I heard it from my wife the first time, where it said, when you lose a parent, you're an orphan. When you lose a spouse, you're a widow or widower. Mm-hmm. If you lose a child, there's no word for it. and it's out there all the time. What am I now? What am I? Because you and my wife, for example, you identified as mothers, and I identify myself as a father, and I'm still, and it didn't take me a long time, but it took me a while to be able to let others know. Just because my son went to heaven on January 13th did not make me no longer his father. Matter of fact, the title I chose for the next book is called "Still Your Dad, Always My Son: A Year in the Life of a Grieving Father," because that's the key. I'm still your dad, and you're always going to be my son. And when people ask me, "How many kids do you have?" I have two sons.
Yeah. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. Well, I know what's coming up here, not too far away. It's
Mm-hmm.
January 13th again, and this is going to be 13 years. How does that feel?
It right now it feels I prepared myself mentally for it.
Yeah.
I had a coworker who had a similar situation when he had a son die years and years ago, and he said the hard part for us was when he reached when it the boy, I think his son died at 14. It says we're 14 for the 14th anniversary after his death when we realized he's been here as long as he was gone. He's been gone as long as he was here. And that was in the back of my mind,
I know.
but it was so long ago, and now it's coming.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's going to happen. I'm preparing
Yeah.
myself for it. I'm preparing for that. I don't know how I'm going to react yet. I just,
Yeah. I was thinking about it too. I just thought, wow,
mhm,
that's going to be a rough one. I mean, that's just going to be. But I
mhm.
knew you'd already
We're
be thinking about it. There's no way I was bringing it up for the first time.
No, no, no. It's been years. I mean, like in my Facebook group, I mentioned. I think because I put a couple of those in the books. This is just before I retired. The 10th year came. I go, 10 years. That's double digits now.
Mm-hmm.
I go, wow. And then
Yeah.
so 13th year is coming up, and we always go somewhere with my sister, my brother-in-law, to the
Mm-hmm.
Bay Area or somewhere. Just for the anniversary, we call it. Oh, do you ever use that term, anniversary? Yeah,
Yeah.
and so yeah, so we're going
I've
to
heard that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
they'll be there for us, and my wife and I will be there for each other. But I suspect it will be something heavily weighing on our hearts that day. But we'll get through it, just like we always do, because we have each other, we have God, and we know if our family and friends will love us, and they'll, it doesn't matter how long it's in heaven from the time when we last saw him. You can't forget a character like that. He was
Yeah.
something else. Like
Yeah. No, right. Well, before we wrap up here, I do want to talk about that Facebook group you have. Whenever you write a post, you end it in a very particular way. And I want you to say that out loud to our listeners because I think it's pretty special.
it started when my son was he was like 6 or 7, and issues were happening at school, and it's dumb issues. My being an educator, I'm going, this is ridiculous, but they still wanted to have an IEP on something. And he's a smart kid. He goes, Daddy, there's something wrong with me. I said, no, no, you're the best 6-year-old in the whole wide world. Your daddy loves you. And I finish it because the last time I spoke with him, and I used to say before I left for school, and when I going to bed at night, I say, Nick, you're the best 13-year-old boy in the whole wide world. Your daddy loves you. And I say that on my journal. I have a journal. I have 20 volumes now. I say that in my group. And sometimes I'll just say that. I said in the books, it is. Forever 13, that's who he is.
Yeah.
And he's the best 13-year boy in the whole wide world. And I love him. I still love him.
I just love how you did that, just said you're the best 13-year-old boy in the whole wide world and daddy loves you very much. I just love that. I do have to say, I'm kind of glad that he didn't make it to 14 because now I can say that my Andy is the best 14-year-old
Yeah.
boy in the whole wide world
Uh-huh.
and his mommy loves him very much. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing Nick with us today. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on here. And I will try somehow to send you a copy of that coming out of the truck, this little transformer thing.
You know what? I do have to ask you one more question as to how people can get your book. Because you just sent me a copy, but how can other people get your book?
They get it through Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Get it through Barnes and Noble. There's a lot of other books Facebook groups that they can order the book through, and
Well, perfect.
even if people are not going through what we're going through, if you know someone's going through it, I really think it'll help them. It's not how to fix grief, but it lets everybody,
Nope.
lets people know.
Yes. So again, the book is called Forever 13. So look
Mhm.
for it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or wherever you buy your books. Thank you again.
Well, thank you. God bless you.
Thanks for listening. If you found this helpful or would like to support the podcast, please leave a 5-star rating and comment. To help financially, you can text Andy's Mom to the number 53555 or visit the donate page on andysmom.com. Your donations are secure and tax deductible, and we are now able to accept Venmo, PayPal, and Apple Pay. Always Andy's Mom is a registered 501c3 organization and can receive donations through smile.amazon.com, Thrivent Financial, and Benevity, amongst others. Marcy loves hearing from listeners. Please feel free to reach out to her via email at marcy@andysmom.com. Also, be sure to sign up for the email list to receive weekly updates as well as pictures of all of Marcy's guests and their children. Together, let's work to inspire hope, one day at a time.